Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full breakdown of all the episodes from Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 2, Episodes 5, 6, and 7. There were a ton of Easter eggs and references, so we'll just start at the beginning of Episode 5 and work our way all through the end of Episode 7. Right as the episodes were releasing, the Duffers also revealed that even if the kids are somehow able to defeat Vecna, the evil will remain, raising a bunch of questions. Episode 5 was titled Shock Jock. It's a reference to the Scooby Gang shocking the Demogorgon on top of the radio station as part of their plan to help Will hack back into Vecna's mind, the hive mind, and use his powers to help save Max and Holly. Also, Shock Jock is slang for Robin's job as a radio DJ. She is a shock jock. Notably, the episode is directed by Frank Darabont, who just came off a 13-year self-imposed retirement from directing anything, mostly because of the mega lawsuit that he'd been involved with AMC over the past decade over the Walking Dead series, which he helped adapt for TV and direct in Season 1. If you want to read about that lawsuit, you can go read about that. There were many hundreds of millions of dollars tied to that. It was a big deal for a long time. The actual episode starts directly after Episode 4 ends, with Mike paying off the line that he had talked about earlier with Will, calling him a sorcerer. Will doesn't come up with the name himself. Mike is the one that starts using it, and they use the Will the Wise callbacks for his Dungeons & Dragons games with them in previous seasons. There are also a lot of jokes about them distinguishing between being a sorcerer and a wizard. Like, no, he's a sorcerer, not a wizard. Like, they're very clear on that fact. Will is also clear in explaining how his powers are different from Eleven and Kali's powers. The way he explains it is that it only works when he's in close proximity to the hive. That's why they have to jack back into the hive with the electricity, with the Demogorgon, for him to actually use the abilities against Vecna. And really, it's just him piggybacking on Vecna's abilities, borrowing Vecna's abilities. Which is where Joyce comes up with the idea for Will to stab Vecna with his own sword to make more Dungeons & Dragons tropes. Joyce also kind of turns into a savant in this episode all of a sudden, like she was on drugs by comparison in Volume 1 episodes. Like she felt like she was just completely out of her depth. And the way they're writing her in the Volume 2 episodes makes it feel like she's 100% clear-headed, and she seems like she's been fighting monsters her entire life. Like it's a night and day kind of shift with Joyce's character. Then we see what Vecna did with the 12 kids he yoinked, plugging them all into the castle structure inside the Abyss dimension. I've talked about this before. This looks like it's right out of the Dark Crystal with this landscape here. But does this tower not look like an upside-down Mind Flayer? If you look inside it, it also seems like its beating heart is in there too. So it really does make it seem like this facility, this place here, is the actual Mind Flayer, the physical Mind Flayer. The same drawing that young Henry Creel made in what we saw at the end of Season 4 when he was messing with the black smoke inside the Abyss. The black smoke is basically meant to be the Mind Flayer. I know there are all kinds of questions that were raised in new theories because of the exotic matter reveal. The idea that Brenner created the exotic matter in a lab, and how that's connected to young Henry Creel's accident in the past, how he got powers in the first place, wound up on the Abyss in the first place. Most of the explanations for young Henry Creel's backstory, what happened to him in those tunnels, how he got powers in the first place, his connection to the Mind Flayer, to the Abyss, which they called Dimension X in the stage play, was all stuff that they dealt with in the stage play, which the Duffer said is meant to be canon to the main series. So we will unpack that as we go along with the different reveals, like the exotic matter reveals. Don't worry, we will talk about that. There are a couple parts of this whole story that seem like they contradict other parts, like some of the parts of the stage play seem like they contradict some of the reveals during Volume 2 here in what might happen during the finale. So we'll see if the Duffers can tie this all together in a convincing way, but a lot of it is a result of some retcons and stuff that they introduced really late in the game, like wasn't part of their original plan when they started Stranger Things, which is why some things don't seem like they make sense, and some storylines seem like they're not going to get paid off fully. There's only 2 hours left in the finale for them to fully pay this off. There's no way they're going to be able to pay it all off.
I hope you're hungry for nothing.
But we also finally got a lot of confirmations about what Vecna's real plan is here, merging both worlds, technically destroying the Earth when he merges them, but that's basically what's happening. What this place is, it's the Abyss, Dimension X of the stage play, and why he needs the 12 kids specifically, why he couldn't do this until he had 12 of them. So it's all meant to tie back to Brenner's program with 12 and what happened with young Henry Creel in the caves, in that scientist with the mystery briefcase, to make all the Pulp Fiction jokes. The whole reason why he needs 12 kids specifically is because he needs to take their power, basically amplify his own power enough to merge physically both worlds across the bridge. Like what you saw with him using his powers of telekinesis to stop Holly mid-air inside the Upside Down and pull her back to the Abyss. He's basically going to do that, but with the entire Earth's dimension and merging both dimensions. He needs 12 extra kids' power to do that. But this is also the reason why Brenner was trying to create his program with 12 kids, where 11 and Kali came from, using Henry Creel's blood, because he wanted to be able to create bridges to other dimensions. The military wants to be able to use the technology to travel across the multiverse. This also gets into Kali's storyline trying to convince 11 to both kill themselves so that the military can continue this program, because even if they do kill Dr. K, Linda Hamilton's character, there'll be another scientist that'll come along to replace her, because the military will always want to find the way to travel across dimensions. They refer to the Mind Space prison here as Kamazatz, which is the fictional place inside A Wrinkle in Time book where the black creature, like the main villain of that storyline, controls. When he tells all the kids the lie about saving them from the monsters and eventually saving their families too, everyone else, he's trying to sell them on the larger idea that the Abyss, this other dimension, is a legitimately better world to live in than the regular Earth. And I think a lot of this is meant to pay off his long-running traumatic childhood and all the WTF messed up things that happened to him as a child. Both what happened when he got lost in the caves, transported the Abyss, met the Mind Flayer during the stage play, and then came back, Brenner full-on abusing him for his test to create the program using his blood all those years. And if you haven't seen the stage play, Stranger Things First Shadow, it shows very traumatic high school years. He went to school with Joyce, most of the other adult characters on the show. The Duffers retcon his age a little bit, so now canonically, he was at school with all the younger kids' parents. Like, he was at school with Joyce, Steve Harrington's father, Ted, Karen Wheeler, and so on, including Hopper too. Like, Hopper was at that high school with them too. The reason why the adults on the show didn't know their former schoolmate, Henry Creel, was Vecna this whole time is because the Duffers hadn't originally planned all this out exactly this way from the start. And it's because when we actually got to season 4, that's Vecna's first actual appearance in the show, they didn't literally see him for a while during that season, and almost nobody on their team connected the dots that it was actually Henry Creel the whole time till relatively recently. For example, when Joyce tries to physically fight Vecna at the end of Volume 1, she's literally trying to fight somebody that she was at school with a long time ago, but she doesn't remember him because she doesn't realize that it is Henry Creel. Maybe there'll be some acknowledgement to their shared past in the finale. Like, they now all know that it is Henry Creel, but I'm not going to hold my breath with that. Like I said, there's only 2 hours left in the finale, so there's a lot of storylines and a lot of plot beats from these side stories that they probably will not pay off. One of the other big comps here, too, is that the Black Thing from the Wrinkle in Time book is similar to the way the Mind Flayer is depicted, making it physically resemble what we actually saw during the events of earlier seasons. But here's the contradictory things with that. So the Duffers said the Stranger Things stage play is meant to be canon to the series, and the Mind Flayer on the stage play is shown to be a totally separate, evil, overarching entity that starts manipulating young Henry Creel when he gets stuck in the Abyss, Dimension X. So at least the stage play makes it seem like the Mind Flayer has been controlling, influencing Henry Creel this whole time. So Vecna, even though he is doing very evil things and has this plan, a lot of the stage play makes it seem or implies that this has all really just been the Mind Flayer's ultimate plan this whole time to make more Star Wars Emperor Palpatine references, making Vecna more like the Darth Vader. We will see how the finale winds up reconciling that. Again, only 2 hours left to wrap this all up, so it's going to be a pretty simple explanation, whatever it winds up being. But there is a reason why they didn't show you what is in that briefcase and what happens to young Henry Creel after this moment in the caves, because they're saving that for the actual finale. Vecna also makes a big deal about setting this whole thing off, actually like starting the transition to merge both worlds on November 6th. The reason why the November 6th date is so important is because during his childhood, when he was at Hawkins High School with all the adult characters, when they were all children growing up, he was in a theater production. It was Joyce's play. We saw her in the flashbacks in Volume 1, and it happened on November 6th, and something very traumatic happened during the actual play itself. So I think the recurring theme of November 6th, like he steals Will, yoinks him on November 6th during Season 1, then he starts the process of merging the planets on November 6th, is all just calling back to that traumatic childhood event on November 6th when he was in high school. They remind you that Kali has crazy Masters of Illusion powers, like her twist on the way that their powers work, her and Eleven's powers, is that she's just better at making illusions. There are also a lot of people that think that she's been trying to trick Eleven and she might be a red herring, might betray the group during the finale. You can let me know in the comments, do you think that we should trust Kali just because of her plan to sacrifice herself and Eleven? Like, she basically trying to sell Eleven on the idea that they need to die. There was actually an interview with the Duffers recently after the Volume 2 episodes were released where they basically tried to explain that they're not going to pull a Game of Thrones Red Wedding situation in the finale, which I think is the Duffers trying to prepare people that they might not wind up killing any of the really big younger characters at least. The only reason why you release a statement like that is to brace for people's negative reactions if they do not kill off any really big characters. When they're leaving, Hopper makes a joke about Steve's BMW that they trashed in Volume 1, RIP to his BMW, currently stuck in the flesh wall, then winds up getting jettisons into the vacuum of nothingness between dimensions like Elon Musk's Tesla, just floating through space, through the oblivion forever. Dude, where's my car? Oh, it's off in the middle of nowhere. Eleven is correct when she calls Hopper out for wanting to die. He had been planning to sacrifice himself heroically for her this whole time, for years now. He always probably believed that he would die at some point protecting her, and it's meant to play into Dustin and Steve's argument. Their fight is basically over the same idea, but using Eddie, and then Dustin being worried that Steve is going to try and sacrifice himself too. Dustin makes a very big Return of the Jedi Star Wars reference, destroying the second Death Star by first destroying the shield generator in the flesh wall as Vecna's shield wall, but as all the other characters say, he's probably going to be wrong, and he is, because they reveal the truth that it is the exotic matter in the flesh wall is just the actual bridge between dimensions. When he says medals for all, it's a reference to the end of A New Hope and the idea that Chewbacca did not get a medal originally. When they go back to Creel House, the kids eating all the sweets and the junk food is also meant to be a metaphor for the goo that Vecna is pumping down their throats constantly, which is what allows him to siphon their powers, adding to his own, so that he's powerful enough to merge the Abyss dimension in the regular dimension. When they go to Holly, the Alice in Wonderland poster in her room feels like a metaphor for Holly's storyline in general, like down the rabbit hole into Wonderland, which is Camazotz on the show. When she mentions the tea, that also feels like a reference to the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. We get a very big Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring reference when Derek overhears their conversation. His dialogue is basically the exact same thing that Samwise Gamgee says to Frodo and Gandalf when he overhears them.
How much did you hear?
Not much. Just how you guys want to escape, but you can't because you need Henry to...
What did you hear? Speak!
Nothing important. That is, I heard a good deal about a ring and a Dark Lord and something about the end of the world, but...
When we go back to the radio station and they're all planning and stop for the snacks, all the snacks feel like a product placement, like this extended scene of them just showing all the different brands. They probably paid to have this actual scene here. TV shows and movies will do this all the time. Anytime you see like a specific logo showcased in a movie or TV show for an extended period of time, usually a brand paid the show or the movie money for that. All these brands are like a combination of Nabisco, General Mills, Frito-Lay products, so they all just probably paid Netflix for this. Erica makes a whole bunch of Frankenstein references to their Demogorgon shock plan. They also use the storyline to bring back Mr. Clark's character. When we go back to Hawkins' laboratory, Dustin makes a treasures hidden in the dungeon reference to dungeon crawling, more Dungeons & Dragons references in general. This will continue through the finale too. Basically, Dungeons & Dragons provides the framework for the entire show. When Steve finds the ball at the center of the maze toy, it's meant to foreshadow the reveal of the ball of exotic matter at the center of Hawkins' laboratory. Nancy and Jonathan basically spend this entire episode slowly breaking up, and the Duffers did confirm recently that they are fully broken up by the end of Volume 2, but they're all still friends. Like she explains, it's not that she wants to get back with Steve, she doesn't want to be with anybody, they just don't want to be together, and they're finally admitting it to each other, like, we don't actually want to get married, we don't want to be together. That if it wasn't clear, the exotic matter is what melted portions of Hawkins' laboratory, like this goo is essentially the exotic matter just melting parts of the physical actual building itself. Probably the more important thing here, though, is that it's deadly to the Mind Flayer, anything from the Abyss, which is why the air near the exotic matter is totally clear of spores and really like any other organic life. Meaning that they'll probably be able to use it, or when they blow it up, use the energy from the explosion to destroy anything organic from Dimension X, the Abyss. Then Kali gives us the full explainer for what happened to her after Season 2, Dr. K capturing her, killing her friends. In reality, what happened is that the Kali episode from Season 2 was originally meant to be a pilot for a Stranger Things spin-off TV series that never wound up happening. The Duffers have never said why they're not doing the Kali spinoff, but they are still doing a live-action spinoff outside Hawkins with totally different characters after the main series ends, even though the Duffers themselves are also leaving Netflix to go to Paramount to do their own new movies, other different IP. Netflix is still going to continue making Stranger Things stuff in the extended universe after the main show ends without the Duffers. But because they canceled the Kali spinoff, they had this really powerful character and nothing to do with her, so they just brought her back onto the show now to pay that off. Originally, she wasn't really part of their grand design for the series the way she is now, so a lot of the story they're adding in at the last minute and tying it to this whole government program, Brenner's program, and now has turned into Dr. K's program to create 12 different kids so they can use their own bridges across space and time. When Holly and Max find the door in the middle of the field, this felt like it was right out of the Peacemaker finale, but you have to remember that this episode was filmed a long time ago, so it's not meant to actually be a Peacemaker reference. In the basement, the movie that Holly and her friend are watching is Patricia Arquette in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, which is what the show is basically doing with the Holly and Max storyline, the kids in general. Vecna is the Freddy Krueger in all this. They're trapped in dreams, so to speak. Also, the show had Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger himself in real life, on the show during season 4 to play Henry Creel's father. Then a lot of you that also probably realize that they're kind of breaking the timeline here too with the references. They do this all the time on the show where they'll like put references where they don't belong in the actual real life timeline, like before songs were created or before products were introduced. So the actual movie that Holly is watching on her TV at home wasn't in theaters until October 1987. And on the show, this is meant to take place Halloween 1987. So this Nightmare on Elm Street movie would not have been playing on TV yet on a broadcast network. So she wouldn't have been able to watch this in this context. But it's just meant to be another example of the show playing it a little fast and loose with their references in the timeline.
Holly, I need you to focus, okay?
When they pushed the bookcase into another time period, it felt like a reference to Interstellar. You also notice the books that are on that shelf too, the book on space, because they are in an alternate dimension right now. Dustin then fully explains what's really going on with the Upside Down this whole time, the exotic matter to the rest of the group. It is the bridge, the flesh wall itself between dimensions. I talked about this a little in my previous video, but the whole timeline on all this, like Brenner's experiments, the exotic matter, is that a young version of Brenner loses his parents. I think it got lost in another dimension, so Brenner, as he grows up, starts studying travel to other dimensions, where he comes up with the idea for exotic matter and creating bridges to other places. So then a young Henry Creel comes along and gets stuck in the caves. And I think the idea is that the scientist thought that he was somebody from Brenner's team coming to take him, and the briefcase he had contained something that was the key to the exotic matter in traveling to other dimensions. Henry Creel then gets sucked into the abyss dimension and gets caught by the Mind Flayer, gets powers, then returns 12 hours later. Young Brenner finds him and then realizes what's happened and uses him to create his program of 12 to continue trying to build a bridge to other dimensions. Then we get to the events of Season 1 where we see 11 push Henry Creel into the abyss, and you get the actual Episode 1, Season 1. So the entire origin of this is the military just studying ways to travel across time and space. We get a little more backstory on Kali, talking about her blood not working, only making the pregnant women and their babies sick. 11's blood does work for some reason. A lot of people wondering, why only 11's blood? Like, what's different about her than the other candidates? Is it just like some random thing, or is she more directly biologically connected to Henry Creel in some way? We will see if we get answers about this in the finale. Like I said, it's only 2 hours, so we're not going to get satisfying explanations for every single thing. Will then successfully stabs Vecna with his own sword, so to speak, helping save Max and Holly, and he reasserts control over his mind, pushing him out. But the idea is, this is meant to show you that he can do it again. Vecna is not invincible. So one of the major battles that happened during the finale will probably be Will hacking back into Vecna's mind. One of the other interesting details too is that when the Demogorgon dies, you notice the black smoke leaves its body. It's the same black smoke that leaves Holly's body, and it looks like the same black smoke that the Mind Flayer is made of in Season 4. So there's still a lot of questions about how the Mind Flayer is really connected to all this, but it just seems like that's the way that it controls everything else, all this other organic life, including the Demogorgons, the Demo Dogs, everything from Dimension X, from the Abyss. Literally, it's just Mind Flayer particles inside of other things. When Jonathan and Nancy also try to blow up the exotic matter, notice that it's the same color of red that we've saw in previous seasons when they depicted the Mind Flayer and some of the other reddish hues of different scenes. This also could be clues as to how young Henry Creel initially got his powers, that having something to do with the exotic matter in the past. Maybe the exotic matter had some effect on him. A lot of the ways that exotic matter seemingly defies laws of physics are seemingly the same way that their powers work. So maybe everybody's powers are connected to the exotic matter. Then the title of episode 6 is Escape from Camazotz, which is just a reference to Max and Holly finally making it out of the Upside Down back into their bodies in Vecna's Mindspace Palace prison. Camazotz is also the alternate world in the Wrinkle of Time book. There are a ton of jokes about Mr. Clark getting it on with the librarian. When Vecna says that there are other ways to get Max, he's talking about killing her body in the normal dimension, which is what he uses Will for, seeing where Max is at the hospital inside Will's memories. At the radio station, Robin pulls out the Kate Bush album because of her Running Up That Hill song. The Tiffany album here is also a callback to Holly's song she played during Volume 1, I Think We're Alone Now. We go back to Will and Vecna. Inside his mind, Vecna traps him in the memory of the library, which is where he put him when he actually captured him physically in Season 1. Vecna also confirms that he used Will back in Season 2 to build all the tunnels under Hawkins. Vecna used him to build them while he slept. This is also meant to be an example of how Vecna is going to physically change the Earth when he combines it with the Abyss. Basically, like, completely change the landscape of the Earth, which is what people are talking about, destroying the Earth. When Holly figures out that M marks the spot with young Henry Creel's spyglass and they find his memory of the caves, M also stands for Mind Flayer. There's still a lot of questions about what else went on inside these caves, but I think mostly they're just meant to show that the Mind Flayer getting stuck in the Abyss was so traumatic in these caves that he's still afraid of it in present day. But there's still a lot of reveals, like a lot of other stuff, truths that they have to show in the finale. So please, Duffers, pay this off in a satisfactory way. We get the full scene of young Henry Creel running into the scientist, accidentally killing him to save himself, and then opening the briefcase. I've already talked about this in my previous video and earlier in this video too. My early theory is that the thing inside the briefcase is just connected to the exotic matter. Max and Holly finally make it to the portals to get back into their bodies and come back into the real world. Holly helps Max realize that she never needed the music. It was never about the music. It was all about her connection with Lucas. So it was all about just recognizing things that you're directly connected to in really strong ways. So it's why Holly's able to open a portal right next to Max's. Then episode 7 is titled The Bridge, which is a reference to the actual upside down bridge to the Abyss. There are a ton of Dark Crystal references, like I said here. You could draw a lot of other real-world movie, TV show references to this scene, too. Like I said, it looks like the upside-down hand, and it looks kind of like the Mind Flayer just turned upside down. When Holly breaks through back into the bridge itself and starts falling through the upside down, a lot of people that were asking, yes, Vecna does technically save her life because she would have splattered on the ground had he not stopped her in midair. We go back to the radio station, they make a Batcave reference. There were some Batman references during Volume 1 too. They would have been referencing Adam West's Batman. He would have been the most recent on-screen version of Batman that they'd seen. You have to remember this is 1987, so it's long before Michael Keaton's 1989 Batman movie, so they haven't seen Michael Keaton Batman yet. Dustin gives them all a much more detailed PowerPoint on how everything with the exotic matter, the bridge, and the Abyss works. The reason why they call it the Abyss is because that's a big Dungeons & Dragons place, a place of chaos and evil. My assumption is that the stage play called it Dimension X because the stage play doesn't trade on a lot of Dungeons & Dragons tropes. Like, that's all a creation of the show and this young group of kids, not Vecna. Vecna doesn't care about Dungeons & Dragons, the kids care about it. So it's why the kids use Dungeons & Dragons terms to refer to all these different things that are happening. But it is basically meant to be the same place. Dimension X is the Abyss. Steve makes a plan using a chopper. I feel like if they're actually going to use a chopper in the finale, they might go for the Arnold Schwarzenegger Predator joke, get to the chopper, because that movie came out in June of 1987. What we're seeing on the show is actually later that year in November of 1987, meaning that all the kids might have seen the Predator movie by now. Robin makes a whole bunch of cracks about Steve having a huge junk, too big to fit, still goes in all the time. She's just a huge cornball like that.
Steve hears that all the time, and he goes in anyway, don't you, Steve?
All the mentions of magic beans is a reference to Jack and the Beanstalk, which Steve plans to use the radio tower for as the Beanstalk metaphorically to allow Eleven to get close enough to enter Vecna's mind and have a mind space wizard battle with him once the worlds get close enough that the radio tower is poking through the Abyss physically. They also plan to take Eleven back to the tanks inside Hawkins' lab because that'll be the closest point to Vecna. It's also the Duffers in real life wanting to take things full circle back to Season 1 where we first saw her in the tanks in Hawkins' lab there. This is also connected to the idea that Brenner had her in the tubs in Hawkins' lab trying to contact Henry Creel across dimensions, which is what ultimately created the Upside Down in the bridge. Then their plan is once they start doing that, they want to destroy the exotic matter, collapse the bridge as they bring Holly and the other kids back, using Hopper's bombs probably that he had on him from Volume 1. When they're getting ready, you also notice in the background of the radio station there's a poster for Pink Floyd's The Wall, which is a nod to the Flesh Wall. Steve makes a Nintendo Duck Hunt reference, and then Dustin and Steve make a Season 3 callback saying, "If you die, I die." They said that during Season 3. Throughout all the episodes, there are many Murray Santa Claus references. That's also because they released Volume 2 episodes on Christmas Day in real life. I already talked about Kali's plan to try and convince 11 to sacrifice themselves. Like I said, I do not think that things will wind up going down this way. I do not expect 11 to die at the end of the series. Also, the interview that the Duffers released where they were trying to tell people to brace for people not dying in the finale that they might think die. There are a couple different ways that they can actually ensure that the military never tries to restart the program. One of them is to convince Dr. K to stop it from within, like she sticks around and stops the military from continuing the program. One of the other ways would also be to kill Vecna if they say that his powers basically feed everyone else. Like all the powers on the show come from Vecna technically because of his blood. So maybe if they kill him, it'll also disable everyone else's powers. You remember back after Season 2, 11 lost her powers briefly. Then they basically use Mike's big coming out moment on the show to also explain how he plans to contact Henry Creel inside Vecna and basically defeat him with what amounts to therapy, like have a mind space therapy session with Henry Creel. He actually said it took him about 12 hours to film this whole speech here that he gives. One of the other funny bits here too is the payoff to his actual reveal when he actually comes out to everyone. There's kind of a non-reaction because a lot of the group, I think, already knew that he was gay, but he just hadn't actually physically said it out loud. Like, yes, we knew the whole time. Then they actually end Volume 2 on the cliffhanger that Vecna lights the candles inside his Kamzat's Mindspace prison, and it looks like they're gathering around the dinner table and starts the process of actually siphoning their powers and physically merging both worlds. Then with the credits on the sound of the grandfather clock in his house chiming to signal the countdown to completion, which they're kind of doing in the Avengers Doomsday trailers now, ending with the countdown to Doomsday. Basically what's happening on the Stranger Things show, countdown to the Doomsday for the Earth. Because there is only 2 hours left to wrap up every single storyline, one of the few ones that we know that we're going to get more of is the rest of young Henry Creel's backstory, like what really happened in those caves, what's really going on with the Mind Flayer, what's really going on with that briefcase, the exotic matter. There will also probably be an extended epilogue for all the characters too, to just show like what happens after they defeat Vecna and they fix everything and stop him from destroying the world. So if you're really thinking about it, we have like a 90-minute final battle and then like a 30-minute epilogue or so, like whatever that winds up being. Do not be surprised if they do not fully pay everything off. Just like brace yourself. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if you spotted any Easter eggs or references that I didn't talk about during this video or my last video, just write them below in the comments. But the really big reminder is that the last episode, the finale, will air on New Year's Eve. My video for that will post right after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for that video. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for all my other Stranger Things videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.